Aged as young as 8, they travel thousands of miles to the UK, all alone.
I thought I was going to die because I was very young, so my journey was very scary.
From Afghanistan to here, we've just got sold from one person to the other, and we ended up here in the UK after being put in a fridge for 48 hours.
The government is meant to ensure young asylum seekers are cared for, but charities say there is a culture of disregard and disbelief pervading the Home Office, and it's proving deadly.
In Alex's case, he wasn't believed about how old he was. He had been through a lot of very traumatic experiences, and as a consequence of that, he took his own life.
Many children have been put through very, very hostile age assessments. The extreme tragic outcome that can come from this process is suicide.
Are the government's hostile immigration policies contributing to suicides among Britain's child refugees?
If you leave these young people just abandoned without kind of support, then you get awful things happening.
Over half of the world's refugees are children, separated from their families. Many flee to Europe, with the majority settling in Spain and Italy. They also come to the UK. According to the Home Office, last year, 1 in 10 asylum claims were lone children, arriving without their parents or anyone to care for them.
My family immigrated to England from Eritrea when I was a child. So stories of young asylum seekers have a special meaning for me. Recently, I was desperately saddened to discover 4 teenage refugees had taken their own lives within months of arriving here. Like my family and I, they came hoping for a safe haven, but were they welcomed?
Croydon is home to around 400 unaccompanied child asylum seekers, a higher number than most other boroughs. Over 90% of these children are male, and a local charity has been trying to help some of them assimilate into the area using the universal language of football.
Of course, the first thing that comes to mind is they don't have the language skills and they really struggle to understand. So that's the first barrier. Along with this, some suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. They can have a range of emotional difficulties, so it's really important that they get access to the correct support.
What type of difficulties have led these young people to seek refuge in the UK?
Well, the young people we see are fleeing war and persecution. That could be because of them belonging in a religious group, in a certain ethnic group. Sometimes they flee because of their family's political activities. Sometimes they might be persecuted because of their sexuality. There is a variety of reasons.
Naz says he was smuggled into the UK from Afghanistan after his family was targeted by the Taliban. He's now 22, but his journey began when he was just 13 years old.
They kidnapped my dad in the middle of the night and they took him. Since they took him, we never seen him again. After that, the people, Taliban was coming again, that we used to take me to a place where they training people. They become suicide bombers. And then one day from that place, they brought me to my house. They told me as well, they said, your brother and sister has been killed.
In desperation, Naz says his mother secretly plotted his escape route from the country.
My mom was crying and she said, you have to go with this man. And I said, I don't want to go. And she said, you have to go. You live in danger. So she gave me to that man. That man took me from the Uruzgan to Kandahar and then from the Kandahar to Kabul, which is the capital city. I couldn't escape from them. They were just like putting me in the cars, putting me in the trucks and in a dangerous places. So they like, for example, passing me from one to another to different countries.
A year later, aged 14 and having travelled over 4,000 miles, Naz was dumped in the UK.
I didn't even know the name of England, to be honest with you. I was very young. I was in the back of the lorry with other two guys. We just started, making noisy, and then the guy called the police, and police came, and then they took us to a police station.
Naz was granted discretionary leave to remain in the UK and placed with a foster family. He settled down and did his best in school. However, 6 months before his 18th birthday, he was told that he would have to leave the country.
My foster family received a call from my solicitor, and he said, this is 3.5-year status, and the Home Office gave you this because your child under 18. I grew up here in the UK, and now you're telling me to go back to your country.
Naz's story is not unusual. Last year, whilst 56% of unaccompanied children were granted indefinite leave to stay, the fate of the remainder hangs in the balance.
The young people we're talking about today, they're liable at any point, any day, to be picked up and detained and removed from the country. For some it happens very quickly, for others they can wait weeks, months, years before it happens to them, but living in fear every day.
Some of these young people could be still children when this process kicks in. And of course, they're more vulnerable because they don't have a network, they don't have any family here, and they're now illegal in this country.
In order to avoid being deported back to countries where their lives might be at risk, many resort to going off-radar, scraping by on poorly paid black market jobs, ending up as rough sleepers. Ismaf was refused asylum after fleeing from Afghanistan as a child. He went underground before he could be deported when he turned 18.
I stay with my friends sometimes, so I can't work, I can't even rent a room. It's like just homeless.
Some will take the option, rather than face the risk of being returned to Eritrea or Afghanistan or Sudan, they'll take the risk of going underground, which is horrible, terrible for them, but bad for all of us. We don't want a country where people are forced to live underground to survive.
Immigration has become a subject of increasing public tension, and the focus has centred on bogus claims. Politicians have responded to this with tougher policies, but campaigners say such measures have led to children in genuine need being turned away.
We've raised concerns, the Home Affairs Select Committee, about what should happen for people who come here as children and then suddenly their cases change when they reach 18 and they're not getting the kind of support they need. They shouldn't simply be returned to the country they came from, and there needs to be a proper system in place.
When an unaccompanied minor arrives in the UK, they must first present themselves at the government screening units for their application to be processed. But many of them struggle to convince officials they are the age they claim to be.
As an asylum seeker, you're giving up, I think nowadays it's about £36 a week to live on.
Liz Clegg runs MENA, a national charity based in Birmingham. Since opening its doors earlier this year, dozens of unaccompanied children have come seeking support.
We deal with a lot of people who are destitute, and so they've got nothing at all.
Henok appeared on a charity's doorstep, hungry and dirty, a few months ago. He says he's a child who fled from Ethiopia after his family got caught up in a political conflict.
We're still unravelling it, but it appears when he arrived in the UK, he claimed asylum as a 16-year-old. And at some point, he was aged assessed and deemed to be an adult, placed in adult accommodation. And he, of course, had no idea what to do next. So as a result, he's literally been sleeping on the street for nearly 2 months.
It was sad when they did not accept my age. I have told many people, but I can't do anything other than be homeless. I have no choice other than to beg for food and drink. All the time I used to cry. I was hungry, no shower, stressed and worried.
Henok insists he is 16 and Liz believes him.
I'm convinced he's a child through his behaviour and his abilities to kind of look after himself and, day-to-day stuff.
However, the local authority disagrees. They have declined to review Henok's case and are standing by his original assessment concluding he's an adult. Yet every day he remains on the streets sleeping rough is another day when he is vulnerable and at risk.
We've been working along with some of our partners in the city to try to identify routes whereby we can get the case looked at and some kind of resolution. It's been about 3 months now, and sadly nothing has progressed at all. Hannah is still not receiving any support, either accommodation, financial support, and importantly emotional, psychological support from any statutory organisation.
When unaccompanied minors don't have the documents to prove their age, social services usually make an assessment based on their physical appearance or demeanour, and they conduct interviews to suss them out. Statistics reveal that last year, 1 in 4 of those assessed were deemed to be adults, not children.
But there are claims that cash-strapped councils are making these assessments under pressure.
Undoubtedly, the times of austerity that we're going through means that there's tremendous pressure on all sorts of services. And there has been research where social workers have told the researchers that they're under extreme pressure not to accept children, to come back from a meeting and say they're over 18 because of those huge pressures on budgets.
There's a financial incentive, in a way, for the local authority to be able to say that person is not a child. And so, unfortunately, those decisions are quite frequent, and they are then appealed against, or sometimes even go to judicial review, a higher level, and quite often those decisions are overturned, and the local authority is forced to accept that this is a child and they have the responsibility.
Across the capital, hundreds of young asylum seekers are struggling to access the appeals process due to an extensive backlog of unresolved cases at the Home Office. Naz has been appealing his case for the past 4 years, and the latest stage of the process has been pushed back yet again.
It's a bit like a drama, to be honest with you. When my case was refused in April this year, the solicitor said to me, you have to bring evidence, pictures, references, character references from people. And then when he called the Home Office for interview, the Home Office says, he can come in 3 months. We haven't go, we were busy and stuff. So that's 6 months. So that's 6 months already gone.
I deal with a lot of immigration cases in my own constituency office, and I know only too well how slow and inefficient the Home Office can be. There is an institutional problem that the Home Office is so slow in dealing with people's cases. And if you're a child with no extended family, it can be a really traumatic situation.
I think the immigration system isn't working to take account of the kinds of traumas that they face. And sometimes you've even got the immigration system making things worse by adding long delays.
From those who are dismissed when they claim to be children, to the teenagers who face being deported at the cusp of adulthood.
Many working in the sector say failures in the system are having a devastating effect, exacerbating the pain and mental health problems of children who are already profoundly traumatized.
The author of a recent study into the mental health of unaccompanied minors believes the government's hostile environment campaign is having a direct negative impact on the well-being of child migrants.
Our research on the mental health needs of unaccompanied young people did find that the hostile environment is one of many contributing factors.
The risk in regards to self-harm and suicide, how big is it?
There is this really high risk of self-harm and suicide, and actually we're concerned that it might be an increasing risk because the issues that are affecting these young people are remaining unresolved. If they're having to wait years to receive a decision from the Home Office, or if they're not getting the education or healthcare, or not being put into an accommodation placement that would be appropriate to their needs, all of these things can accumulate and unfortunately create this really high risk of self-harm and suicide.
Over the last year, at least 4 teenage asylum seekers in London, all originally from Eritrea, are believed to have taken their own lives. Solicitor Olivia Annis is representing two of the families.
The first is Alexander Tekle and the second is Osman Ahmed Noor. Both arrived in the UK from Eritrea when they were children and they were seeking refuge in the UK. Very sadly, Alexander died when he was only 18 and Osman died when he was 19 years old. We are aware that Osman and Alexander are two of 4 deaths that have happened in about the last year of young people who came to the UK as asylum-seeking minors, and it appears that they have all died in similar circumstances, which is obviously extremely concerning.
Inquests into the 2 deaths are ongoing. However, people who knew the boys say they were deeply stressed with the protracted process of applying for a refugee status in the UK. Benny met Alexander Tekle when he was volunteering at the Calais migrant camp 2 years ago.
That was the 2 of us in Calais. So he would have been there for at least 6 or 7 months by the time I met him, and he lived there for a whole year. In the worst of circumstances for a teenager to be living in, to be growing up in, without any family, without any supervision, without any, education. Alex was just, I don't know, he was so stubborn and funny and, he's so interested in everything in the world. He was just so childlike, and I really miss him. I really miss him a lot.
So do you know how Alex came to be in London?
He crossed at the end of 2016 in the back of a refrigerated lorry with a number of other young people. It was a very dangerous crossing, and that's the risk that he was putting himself in. When Alex arrived in the UK, there was an issue with his age. The age that he gave was disputed by the authorities, so they placed him in an adult asylum seekers hostel.
As a minor?
He was underage.
How old was he by this time?
He was 17, yeah. And while he was there, he was assaulted in his accommodation. He decided to stop going back to his hostel, and he became homeless.
Eventually, the Home Office reassessed Alex and concluded he was indeed just 17, a child. But by then, Benny says it was too late.
In Alex's case, he wasn't believed about how old he was, and I think that he had been through a lot of very traumatic experiences that he would have been thinking about. So after a few months of being in the UK, his mental state started to deteriorate. As a consequence of that, he took his own life. The Home Office has to ask itself whether putting children through immigration control is worth the risk of their well-being. They are experiencing trauma and they are experiencing stressful environments and not adequately being supported through that.
The Home Office declined our request for an interview, but in a statement they said,
"The Home Office takes its responsibility for the welfare of children seriously and have very stringent statutory and policy safeguards in place regarding child welfare."
They did not comment on the recent deaths.
We do need to find a balance between our immigration policies, but treating these young people fairly. And when young people are driven to suicide or otherwise made to feel desperate because of the way they're processed when they get here, that must be wrong.
I think it is deeply distressing that you have teenagers who may have gone through all kinds of awful experiences end up taking their own lives, and that is deeply distressing that should happen, but it shows the level of support and often mental health support as well that some of these young people really need, and the Home Office needs to recognise that and not add to the stress by long delays in the Home Office processes.
In the year before he died, Alex had made friends with other asylum seekers in London. 18-year-old Tess shared a room with him from time to time and says Alex was happy and hopeful about his future when he first arrived. But things quickly changed.
He has stress. They didn't get passport. They didn't get enough money. Like, the experience has been bad. I'm angry. Alex died 3 or 4 months ago. He lived with me as well as Osman. he died too.
Tess travelled to London 2 years ago from Eritrea. He says Alex took the same route as him at a later date and was haunted by the experience until his death.
Our journey was very dangerous and scary because the travel without family, no money and no communicational language was very dangerous and unthinkable. If you come to Europe from my country, I went Sudan, then from Sudan I'm going Libya. Travelling to Libya was one of the worst experiences in my life because there was no water or food. Also, it was very hot. Then when we were travelling to Libya one Tuesday morning, kidnappers turned up whose faces we could not see. I think they are kidnappers. They would like to kidnap us, so we need to protect ourselves. 7 months, 6 months, and then too many people from Eritrea as well. So many as well, Ethiopia as well. They came in one boat. Our boat was very small and we were many women, men and children. It was crowded. When the rescue team approached, we started moving with happiness. The boat tilted, so many of the travellers died on the sea.
No child should have to suffer the way that these have. No child should have to see people die around them in order just to get to a safer place. The psychological and emotional damage done to these young people is extraordinary. They arrive here, they think they're safe, they think they're going to be taken care of, and then somebody just says, I don't believe you're a child.
A campaign is now growing for Britain to adopt a similar system to Europe, where upon arrival, unaccompanied minors are partnered with a guardian throughout the asylum process.
It's really important that the national government, local authorities and healthcare professionals are working together to ensure that these young people are properly supported. And what that means is that they're getting thorough assessments, so their needs are properly identified, and also that they get nominated an independent guardian, so someone that the government is providing that will actually help them through these processes and is always looking out for their best interests.
Another month has passed and Naz is still waiting to hear from the Home Office. He's trying to keep fit as he wants to be a firefighter, but due to his unstable immigration status, he's not allowed to work.
Before I was working in the pizza shop, I was paying taxes, I was paying for my rent and for other things. So now they refused my case and I'm not allowed to work.
Naz has been given a flat to live in and gets some money for food. But as a care leaver, he's not given the same level of support as young British adults who have recently left care.
Fairly recently, they've put the age up to 25, where young people leaving care can access support packages, so they can get a kind of support worker to check in with them, make sure they're going in the right direction, if they need help with further education, all sorts. Children who've failed the asylum process and reach 18 are then denied any of that support because they become no recourse to public fund.
Life for Henok has changed over the past few weeks. When Ariel met Henok after being alerted to his plight, she says she instinctively felt he was a child and offered him a home.
He's definitely a teenager. He has just the beginnings of some facial hair on his upper lip, has mood swings and temper tantrums, has that kind of childish way of becoming obsessed with little things like drawing. He's been through a lot, he's been on the road and on his journey for a long time, and he's clearly experienced some trauma, and you can see that in the way that he relates to certain situations. He gets very anxious in group scenarios, meeting new people. He's often very withdrawn.
Henok is out of immediate danger, but this offer of a place to sleep is only temporary, and time is running out. The Home Office says it never returns unaccompanied children to their country of origin until it is safe to do so. Yet unless Henok can convince them he is a child soon, there is every chance he will be deported.
I fear that the Home Office and everybody who's in positions of authority trying to deal with his case, that they're postponing dealing with his case until he turns 18, which isn't that far away. That I worry that he'll get to that stage and they'll say, oh look, well now even he's saying he's 18, so we can wash our hands of him.
The uncertainty of it all is increasingly affecting Henok's mental health.
He suffers terribly with insomnia. I frequently come back from night shifts at 6 in the morning and find him just up in his room, just lying on his back, staring at the ceiling, just unable to sleep.
I am thinking for a long time what I am doing here. What will happen to me, and does anyone even care? I begin not to care myself. Sometimes I feel to give up. I say, what's the use? I am missing school. I have no friends. I am lost here. Lost.
Some of the children who arrive in the UK in search of a safe haven are being failed by us. Instead of compassion and care, they are being met with suspicion and disdain. There will always be fraudsters who try and con the system, but I believe we're capable of rooting them out without causing further harm to those children who are in genuine need.